There's a term called neuroplasticity, and it's a relatively new term in neuroscience. Neuroscience being the study of the brain and the nervous system. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. And until recently, scientists thought that this was only possible in children and adolescents, and when someone reached adulthood, who they are is relatively set in stone, but this isn't true. Each of us have the ability to make new neural connections and reorganize our brains throughout our entire life. And this is incredibly important. This is an incredibly important thing to know when we consider how we address conflict and how we react to conflict. A very well-known but simplistic and not entirely accurate model of the brain is the concept of a triune brain. The triune brain is an evolutionary model of the brain, with the earliest structure being referred to as the lizard brain, which controls matters of survival, such as vital body functions, aggression, fear, social hierarchies, and the flight or fight reflex. The midsection of the triune brain model, and the next to form evolutionary, in the evolutionary sense, is the limbic system or mammalian brain. The mammal mind regulates hormones via the pituitary gland, and it involves the emotions, social attachment, altruism, possibly ethics, and the sense of smell. And it also controls the finer functions such as hunger and thirst. And finally, we have the most recent development in the triune brain model, the neocortex. And in humans, the prefrontal cortex is particularly enlarged, and this is what governs our ability to engage in complex analysis. It enhances our learning and our memory, and our abstract and rational thought. It also is responsible for foresight, hindsight, and insight. So every social interaction we have is filtered through this triune brain model, and all of the sections play a vital role in how we react and respond to conflict. For the purposes of this video, I've put together some really, really poorly made animation. I mean, it's really terrible, guys. Anyway, so this is John, and let's give his brain a stimuli, something external that has happened and needs to be filtered through his brain. While all areas of the brain work in unison, for simplicity, we're going to speak about them as if they're separate. So John is engaged in a social interaction, and he needs to know how to act and react. The social interaction goes to his midbrain, his limbic system. We already talked about the limbic system being the controller of emotions, but what we didn't talk about is how the limbic system has memory. Your limbic system knows what has happened to you in past situations that are similar to what is now happening to you, and that directs your reactions to either go up to your prefrontal cortex for reasoning and rational thought, or down to your lizard brain and amygdala, where your fight or flight response will be activated. Okay, so there is a dog off leash with the owner within sight, but not really in control of their dog. John has had many run-ins with this dog that have not ended well. His limbic system remembers this and does not even give his reasoning brain a chance to respond. Rather, the stimuli is sent to lizard brain, which responds by flooding his body with stress hormones and adrenaline, and he lashes out at the dog, yells at the owner for being inconsiderate. All that reactiveness, and the dog was friendly, but John never had a chance. His brain is programmed to go into survival mode in that circumstance, and the owner of the dog was just collateral damage of John's past experiences. Okay, so let's change it up. John loves dogs and has never had a bad experience with one. He sees the dog off leash and the owner behind, and his limbic system fondly remembers how much his own dog loves to be free of his leash. The stimuli is sent up to his prefrontal cortex, where he's able to reason and be rational. He can see the dog is friendly and the owner is relatively close. His body is flooded with happy hormones like oxytocin. He breathes deeply and smiles at the owner as they pass by. Isn't the difference amazing? Just changing the collective experiences of John completely changed his reaction to the situation. So how can we use this information to help resolve conflict? The first step in resolving conflict is to take a step back, so as to get the full picture. Having information on how the brain works can help us to be mindful when faced with conflict, because we know that every person has had unique experiences which partially govern how they will react. And a person's poor reaction may have nothing to do with you or the situation, but rather it's a default response caused by patterns of experiences in their life. Because of this, there are a few steps that are worth taking whenever you are faced with conflict. First of all, pause. Try to refrain from simply reacting. If you react to their reaction to conflict, you start a chain reaction where no one is really using their thinking brain. Everybody is in lizard brain. They're just trying to survive the situation or the conversation. The focus is on survival, which in these situations looks a lot like winning the argument. And this may seem like a good plan, but no one really wins in these situations. Once you pause, give the person the benefit of the doubt. When you do this, you essentially are making an agreement within yourself to believe them about something while they present their case, because you yourself have some doubt about the subject or the situation. The next step is to ask clarifying questions with an ear to listen. You're not just asking questions to gain information. You really want to hear them and try to get their point of view. You want to try to understand where they're coming from, even if you don't agree with it. Try to imagine the reasons they might believe they are right or justified. Okay, so you were faced with conflict and you took the steps that I just mentioned. What happened in their brain? They were agitated. They were in fight or flight center. Their lizard brain was ready for battle. But then you didn't draw your sword. You paused. They noticed. Then your body language and words let them know that you were not assuming the worst of them. They noticed. Then you asked them questions about their stance and you really listened. They noticed. Do you want to know what else they probably did? They probably moved out of lizard brain and into their thinking brain because they had to. You were not there to fight. You were there asking questions that needed a different part of their brain. They didn't feel threatened. They felt validated. And even if neither of you agree, still the fact that you were willing to respectfully listen to their point of view brought the conflict to a plane where reasoning could happen, where you could reason your stance. And even if the conflict was not resolved this time, you have placed a file in their limbic system that will start creating new pathways. And this is the neuroplasticity that we talked about at the beginning of the video. It's a file that tells them that they do not need to default to their lizard/survival brain when faced with this next time. No one learns while they're in survival brain. So if your goal is to really teach someone, then your goal needs to be getting them into their thinking brain. And if your goal is to get them into their thinking and reasoning brain, then your goal cannot be simply winning. Because guess what? Winning in these situations is not really winning. Teaching is winning, being taught is winning, and coming together to learn is winning. And if you come at it from that point of view, when you're faced with a conflict, then the chances of that conflict being resolved peacefully and respectfully and actually having a positive outcome are greatly increased, and both parties will leave the conflict feeling good about it.